D&D is fundamentally a game of resource management. Every aspect of your character contains a limit to how often you can use that feature because of a whole bunch of different factors. That resource management loop is broken. Now, before you think that I'm a D&D hater, I play D&D every week. I love the game. It's got great history. I think it's a testament to how well the game is designed overall, that the resource management loop can be as broken as it is and the game still be fun. All of the things that people tend to complain about D&D with. Combat takes too long. Everybody goes Nova every time. They have a single encounter and then they rest. These are all things that tie back to this central resource management loop. And most of the content out there involves trying to fix these elements in one way or another. In my mind, the core problem is that D&D was built to play a very different game than people are using it. We haven't focused primarily on dungeon since the early 2000s with third edition. Now the focus is very much on narrative play, collaborative storytelling, in a way that it simply wasn't in first edition and into second edition. But the game is built mechanically for that type of play. The folks at RPG Bot have a couple of videos where they talk about that it's an explicit statement that D&D was built around the idea that the characters will have 24 approximately rounds of combat every game day. That doesn't happen in any real setting other than a dungeon. 8 fights potentially, and that's a single game day. The problem with this is that because of the nature of the way D&D combat works, you roll, make an attack roll, and then you see if that hits based off the armor class, and then you roll damage, and then you apply damage, and then there's saving throws. All of this back and forth rolling ends up meaning that combat takes a certain amount of time, and that amount of time at the table is not conducive to playing a 24 round combat day. The rule of thumb that I've used is that in D&D, you should expect a single combat encounter to take somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour to an hour and a half. So that means you may have to take 2 sessions or 3 sessions to get through a single adventuring day. That's 12 hours of time. That just doesn't work. And so what ends up happening as a result of this is that people have a combat and then they take a long rest. And long resting resets all of their abilities. And so virtually every combat encounter ends up with the players at full resources when they walk in. That means that lower CR monsters cannot be used as a threat. So you always have to go towards the upper tier of the difficulty challenge. And so when you do that, you increase the risk of a TPK. And it contributes to the idea that the CR system is broken because we're constantly having to work at CRs that are above the player level because we simply can't expect the players to have any meaningful resource depletion. This also kind of gets to the idea that D&D kind of has something of an identity crisis. If you look at the game, the core game loop of what you're actually doing is you go out into the wilderness and you find monsters, kill them, take their stuff, and then get that loot, and that loot makes you more powerful so you can go kill more monsters. At least mechanically, that's the core game loop. Whether your table plays that way or not is entirely irrelevant. That's the way the game is mechanically designed to be played. But the problem is that magic items are not accounted for in the core math of the game, which means that if the game is designed around a certain difficulty curve and your characters get magic items, which is the function of the game, what you end up with is that even a +1 sword breaks down the math a little bit, and the players become stronger than they are expected to be based off of the core math. And so then what you end up with is, again, you have to use stronger monsters. So there's a lot of effort that goes into people homebrewing ways to do this. There are a couple of different paths that people go down. One is you can talk about changing the way combat is paced. And this can be done from the perspective of speeding up combat or adjusting the way resting works. I think both of these have a lot of merit. I've been recently using the Nimble 5e rules in my D&D campaign, and I love it because it allows me to get more story into our session. The other side that you can do is instead of speeding up combat, you can adjust the way resting works. And we're doing this in our campaign right now as well. I think there are still some areas where this kind of um, situation kind of breaks down, some edge cases where um, there are some relatively low level spells that produce the kinds of situations that would turn an 8-hour rest into a long rest in the expedition setting. But we're using expedition rules where 8 hours of rest provides the benefits of a short rest. And then the third consecutive short rest provides the benefits of a long rest. This allows us to approach this from two different perspectives. We're speeding up combat by applying these Nimble 5e rules. And then the other option is, again, slowing down resting. So the resources that are used in combat don't recover quite as quickly. And that allows us to control the pacing a little more and have lower level challenges still feel relevant. And I don't have to just throw big CR monsters at my players all the time. Because the problem is that if you have just this giant bag of hit points from a high CR creature, those high CR creatures also tend to have really, really robust attacks. And those robust attacks are often too powerful for the threat level that the players are. And so you have a real risk that you're going to have a death spiral and the party will end up in a TPK situation. Other games approach this from the perspective of simply removing this resource management loop, and how this is applied within the game structure really has a lot to do with how the game feels. In Shadowrun, spellcasters don't have to manage spell slots. They know spells and can cast them at will, as if they were cantrips. The difference is that you have to make a casting roll. And if you fail that casting roll, you lose that spell until you're able to rest. This resource management really becomes more of a survival horror type element, that if you fail and you lose that resource, what ends up happening is you are now depleting further and further in a way that adds to the horror element of the game. Shadowrun doesn't shy away from resource management entirely. They actually tighten a lot of it down with equipment slots, the way that they manage that. And then the very real issue of torches. You use a torch, you can't see in the dark without it. That torch lasts 1 hour of game time at the table. And so you have a real resource pressure there, but not necessarily with spells. Altered World took a similar approach. The difference there is we don't have the attrition piece. In our game, you can cast any power that you have as if it were a cantrip. Just use it at will. Powers take differing amounts of game time to cast depending on what Naosh you are, which has to do with how your powers function. But many of those Naoshi will require you to make a power action to see if your power actually successfully manifests in the world. The difference is that if you fail that roll, you don't lose access to the power for the day. You can just try again. And this creates a very different playstyle. It's not survival horror, it's more power fantasy. If I were to come back to D&D and try to pin down exactly where this resource loop breaks, it breaks because we have simply stopped playing the game the way that it was originally designed to play. But I think the other side is D&D is robust and flexible enough that it allows players to continue to play this game, have fun, and adjust the way that the rules are implemented at their table so that everyone has the experience that they're looking for. I'm Travis with Interaction Games. We're producing a new science fantasy TTRPG called Altered World. It's the game that lets you finally answer the question, what happens when the cleric is a mage, the wizard is a priest, and the rogue isn't normal? If you like our approach to game design, you may want to check out our other content here on YouTube or check out our Quick Start. It's available for free download on RPG Trader and DriveThru RPG. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep your world altered.